Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be another Canadian Soldier Reacts video, and today we're looking at how to survive in the wilderness with NATO's battle group Estonia. Now, I actually have a lot of experience with this. In 1RCR from 1987 to 1998, we were Ace Mobile Force, which was the quick reaction unit, basically 24 hours notice to move anywhere in Europe. And we, as Canadians, we were winter warfare, mountain warfare troops. We exercised with NATO many times. We competed against multiple different NATO countries, and I think in every single time, or maybe almost every single time, we won the competitions. So I'm well qualified in winter survival. So I'm really interested to see what it's like, because obviously my knowledge is good 20 plus years old. Actually 25 to 30 years. I'm getting old. Okay, so let's get into it, see what it looks like.
As a general rule of thumb, 3 days without water.
So those were interesting. Let me see if I can go back.
As a
okay, so first of all, this is very similar to Canadian cam. So we would have basically a winter cam oversuit, essentially, which consisted of pants, a jacket, and a ruck cover. Which is exactly what these guys are doing. And the smart thing about what these guys are doing is you have to change this depending on the terrain that you're in. And currently they're in terrain where there's snow on the bottom, but there's trees. So they keep their white on the bottom, which blends in with the snow, but they take their white off of the top. Now they still have their white on their rucksacks. I think I probably would have taken that off too, but the general idea is there, and it works. And this is exactly the same thing we did in Canada.
General rule of thumb.
And these look, so what we had what we called Gore-Tex socks, which actually went inside. They went over top of our socks, but inside our boots and inside our trousers. These look like Gore-Tex, I'm going to call them putties, maybe, but meant to go over top. To keep the moisture off of your pants, I'm assuming. And to be honest, the logo that's there makes me think they're civilian and not military, which is a little bit weird. But very effective piece of kit. The Gore-Tex socks, man, we didn't have them for the first 6 years of my service, but the last 6 years we had them. They were a godsend. I loved them.
3 days without water and 3 weeks without food.
So 3 days without water in a winter environment, well, I mean, if you actually had no water for 3 days, I think you'd be pretty close to dead. You've got to be able to find your own water. But in a winter environment, literally the water is sitting on the ground around you. You pack snow. You've got to have some sort of a heat source, right? But you pack snow, boil it, and that's your water. 3 weeks without food. He obviously, I think, means that you're getting your own food. And in our survival courses, let alone our winter survival courses, you learned all kinds of different techniques for catching animals, including squirrel poles, rabbit traps, small game traps, fishing, ice fishing. In fact, we carried just a tiny little ice fishing kit with us, which really just consisted of a line wrapped around a stick, kind of a thing, and we would bait that with whatever we had, to be honest. Sometimes just a shiny jigger, but yeah, basically, I think what he's saying is you have to be able to find or make your own water and forage for or trap your own food. And these are all skills that were taught in the Canadian Forces, at least in my unit.
That's probably as long as you're looking to last without those vital necessities for
So these
life.
are all Brits. Yeah, that was I can't remember the name of that one. That's their bullpup, SA-80, I think.
When we speak about survival, it's highly dependent on the environment that you're in.
Just turning him down a little. Better defend the alliance.
These are a few.
Yeah, that weapon is the same one that they were using when I was there. So this guy's a sergeant, which is equivalent to a Canadian sergeant, but it's equivalent to, I think in America it's a first sergeant, 3 up, 1 down. These guys would be often used as platoon second in command. So they, like the platoon lieutenant for us, would be in command, and then this guy, we would call him the 2IC. That's generally what these guys are used for, but they could also be section commanders.
A few basic top tips for how to sustain yourself in a cold weather environment.
First thing, layering. You want to have a good set of layers, right? You want a good water wicking underlayer. You want a couple of good insulating overlayers, and then a waterproof top layer. And you want to be smart enough to take those off and put them on at the right times. Because if you overheat and you sweat too much, you will freeze to death. So this guy's a British corporal, and that's equivalent to a Canadian master corporal. So and it would be an American 3-stripe sergeant. So these guys are, I was a master corporal. These guys are section commanders in charge of 10 to, well, sometimes as low as 8, but usually 10 to 12 men in a combat situation.
Out here in Estonia, in the winter, the priority is going to be heat and shelter initially, followed by water and then food.
Ooh, improvised shelters. Yeah. So this is a lot of fun. They're obviously doing a, well, I want to say a section shelter, but what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, this is a section shelter. So they're all going to be in here. And how you make these are pretty important for a couple of reasons. First and foremost is for keeping the wet out. So if it's really, really cold, rain isn't really a factor. Snow would be. But this looks like kind of an in-between kind of a temperature where you could get rain, you could get snow. And that is probably one of the most lethal. Like, that is more worrisome than like really, really bitter cold. It's a lot easier, to be honest, in bitter cold. So you first want to make sure that you keep it dry, and there's a way that you layer the boughs from the bottom up to ensure that happens. But after that, then you're looking at warmth, heat in there, and then you're looking at, like he said, food, and dead last comes comfort. You know, inside the shelter.
The shelter, clearly you need to consider how many people need to be accommodated. The basic material that you need to collect are logs to build a frame, and then also plenty of brushwood to retain that heat. To start the fire, you need some tinder, small combustible materials. Out here, birch bark works particularly well even when wet.
For starting.
Then progress up to
just for starting.
Small sticks, no thicker than a finger. You can then...
Yeah, and when they're green, it's really problematic. You want to actually collect deadfall if you can, at least for starting the fire. I mean, if you can find deadfall that you can cut up for actual logs, that's fantastic. But most likely you're going to be using greenwood. And the problem with well, there's a couple of problems with greenwood, but one of the biggest problems with greenwood in a situation like that is a ton of smoke. So generally what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to put the fire outside of the shelter so that it's clear up to the sky, so the smoke can go up. But then you're going to want to build a reflecting wall behind it, and then leave it open to the short side of your shelter, so that you're going down the long way of the shelter, so it's reflecting that heat into the shelter for you, but the smoke is still able to go up, because if that smoke circulates inside that shelter, it is nasty on the troops.
And start to add on larger logs as fuel. Out here, water is really easy to come by, so whether that's by melting snow or finding some sort of water feature to collect and then boil, ensuring it's safe.
Yeah, a stream is perfect, but
in terms of food, you firstly want to think about some sort of snare device to catch the small animal. Then you want to consider how you're going to process it and cook it so it's safe to eat.
Yeah, and that's something that we're taught a lot of different, well, I said earlier, a lot of different snaring techniques, but also a lot of different cooking techniques. Also, what things that you can actually find in the forest that are edible. And if for any chance there's, any kind of wild vegetables of any sort, mushrooms, but you really got to know what you're doing with mushrooms. And if it comes down to it, you can eat things that a lot of people wouldn't even think are edible. So, there actually are a lot more things that you can eat than a lot of people would realize.
Prior to finding yourself in a survival situation, you want to try and arm yourself with as much knowledge as possible, reading books, researching what flora is actually edible out here in the wild.
Yeah, life-saving.
A few items to consider when operating in this environment are your flint and steel to start a fire. That will 100% work all the time.
Yeah, so flint and steel or magnesium and steel, actually. I carried a magnesium bar and just a knife, the back of a knife. That worked really well. We never really had flint, but I also carried a box of matches and a couple of different lighters, right? You start your fire the easiest way you can, right? You start with your lighter, your matches, your magnesium and steel if you have to do that. Or if none of that works, you can get right down to building basically a bow with a shoestring and a stick, and you can actually start a fire basically by friction. It's the same as the rubbing the hands, although I've never been able to get that to work. I can do it with a bow, but not with my hands.
Time when wet. Secondly, items for cutting wood, so some form of small folding saw.
Yeah, so we would actually get issued, each section would get issued it's sort of a folding saw. It was like a triangle saw, and the blade was about that long, I guess. And it went together kind of like a hacksaw blade, where it put the blade into tension. These are slightly newer, but they're all good. Also, a couple of guys had personal knives which had similar serration on the back of the knife. And then I carried machete with me at all times, plus I think they call it a Laplander knife. It's a Norwegian knife that I got from the Norwegian Civil Patrol, or Defense Patrol, whatever they call them. It's about yay long. I should have brought it in, but and then I carried another shorter Norwegian knife. Actually, I carried like 7 or 8 knives, so we'll get into that some other time.
And also a small knife with which to process firewood.
Yeah, you always start from the bottom up on those shelters also. So that's it for the video, actually. They didn't really tell you much, but there's a lot that goes into the training for winter survival. And that, to be honest, what they showed there isn't even really winter survival. When you want to get into actual winter survival, and you're talking snow caves, and down to minus 50 degrees, you're talking some really hardcore winter survival, and things change a lot when that happens. So anyway, yeah, that's about it. Very similar. So British and Canadian, right? Very, very similar in how we work. We've worked with the British many, many times. So, yeah, it's not strange that it's all that similar, but it's actually not as hard as people would think to survive as long as you've got, some of the basics, you're able to keep yourself dry, and you're able to forage for or snare some food and find some sort of a water source. And like he said, it's abundant when there's snow on the ground. But if you can find a stream or something like that, some kind of water source, that's even better. But always boil the water. And we actually had water purification tabs. They tasted like hell. Basically, they tasted like sulfur when you drop them in. But it made the water drinkable, right? You're not going to actually get some sort of a parasite from it. But honestly, boiling the water and filtering out, even there's a number of different ways to filter, to be honest. But that's honestly good enough. So anyway, that's about it, guys. So what are we at here? Oh, we're at 16 minutes already. So right on. Thanks for watching, guys. Listen, if you liked the video, please leave a like, leave a comment down below, and please subscribe to the channel or put this video out on to any of your friends that might like this stuff. I'd really like to get to 1,000 subscribers here. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.